Faces of Abortion is the only television program of its kind that shows the powerful, real-life stories of women, men, and families who have suffered the devastation of abortion. Faces of Abortion touches hearts and changes lives in over 125 nations. Faces of Abortion is a program that will help you with healing from the heart and hope for the future. You will be given practical steps for healing in your life and help to end the suffering of abortion.
So it just overwhelmed me. And I thought the only way to escape the pain was to take my life.
I had a fear that I wouldn't be able to have my own children.
It brings heartache. It brings hurt.
And I knew they were tearing my baby apart.
I remember the cold feeling of the room.
I remember laying there and I just said to myself that I will never forgive myself for what I'm doing.
I believe that my life was spared that night just so that I could be here right now and say abortion hurts women.
Whisper, be silent no more.
Welcome to Faces of Abortion. I'm your host, Cindy Collins, and today I'm with Alan Parker and Clayton Trotter. Alan is president of the Justice Foundation. Clayton is general counsel of the Justice Foundation. It's going to be a great show today.
I'm very excited. We're very privileged to be able to hear Shelley and Donnell tell us about their abortion experience, and we're going to hear things most people never hear in their whole life.
Thank you, Alan. And now we want to go hear Shelley's story in her own words.
My name is Shelley Lee. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. I was married and had a 9-month-old baby. They say you don't get pregnant when you're nursing the baby. That's not true. I did become pregnant and went to a pregnancy-free clinic down by the college. And when I went there and found out I was pregnant, I believe they could tell there was concern and immediately wrote the name of a doctor that does abortions. And when I went home and told my husband the situation, he gave me an ultimatum that either I had an abortion or went back to work. And because of situations in my childhood where my mom wasn't at home for us and my sister and I were 18 months apart, there were circumstances that pressed me in fear that to go forward with it, and the sense of urgency. So I went to the clinic and he dropped me off, and I went in, and they didn't offer any information as far as the baby. And as I look back on it now, it had been probably well, when I went in there, they asked me questions, and then went in and had the procedure. And I remember them offering these fuzzy little socks that you put on your feet, the little tiny socks. And for years I couldn't wear those little fuzzy socks because I remember that day there weren't very many people there, and they made it seem very light. But as years have passed, anytime I go past that corner, even though it was many years ago, there was a death that day with the baby and also with me, because at that point my trust in my husband that I thought would protect us and would say it's all going to be okay. And I do accept responsibility for myself too, but part of me really wanted him to say it'll be okay. I ended up following through, and so that night when I came home, I just remember huddling in the corner and wanting to pull my hair out. I went through a deep depression, and my baby that was 9 months old, there was a bond that I believe was broken that day too. And years had passed, and I had heard on the radio Tilly, story of Tilly, and had been 14 years of denial, never had said a word to anyone or had expressed any thoughts, and that shell broke. And I realized the reason that my shell denial had been so deep for so long is, how could you nurse a baby at 9 months and deny that there's a baby in your womb? And so I believe by God's grace, He allowed me to hold there until the time was that I could work through the healing process of that. And I went through a Bible study, and through that experience God's grace and His forgiveness and understanding that God doesn't make any mistakes, that His grace is sufficient for all things, but yet on this earth, because of my choice, I'll never hold that baby here. And I thank the Lord that He did bless me with another child years later. But as far as relationally, I believe the communication and trust broke that day between me and now my ex-husband, and also with my daughter that was 9 months old. Since then, our relationship, even at this point, she's 29 years old now, our relation just in these last years has started to come together, and I know that it was because of a brokenness that happened way back then. And so I just want to speak to any women that are watching that are considering having abortion. I want you to know God alone is the one that gives life, and God alone is the one that takes life, and to trust Him, He will provide. And for those that have had abortions, I just want to encourage you, it is not the unforgivable sin. God desires to walk alongside of you. There are Bible studies that will help you through that process. And I know for me personally, when I filled out the affidavit with Operation Outcry, that was a healing process in itself. It was an opportunity for me to honor my baby. And even though he hasn't walked on this earth, I believe that by God's grace, he's had more impact of God's grace and God's forgiveness in his life. And I just want to encourage you, God is able to do.
You just heard Shelley's story, a story where she wanted support from her husband, encouragement to have her child, also issues after the abortion where she had had relationship issues with her 9-month-old. She was wondering how could she nurse a 9-month-old and then at the same time abort her child, and just seeing that devastation, the hurt in Shelley's life. I know that I see that so often in women's lives, the women that we've seen in Operation Outcry that have been hurt and wounded by abortion.
Yes, and Shelley mentioned an affidavit, which is a written story about her abortion that she's given to Operation Outcry because she doesn't want other women to go through the pain she suffered. And we're going to talk more at the end of the program how our viewing audience can do an affidavit, a written testimony about their abortion experience. But I also noticed the ultimatum her husband gave her. And I hope that men who are watching this program know that they may think they're helping their wife to get an abortion, but instead they're opening up a doorway for pain and suffering, and that a man should be there to protect and support his wife. When she's pregnant, she needs help, and she wants her husband to be there to protect her, and it can really damage that bond of trust that should be there.
Well, you know, Alan, I saw how fear was played out in the situation that Shelley faced. She went to the clinic, and the first thing the clinic did after they confirmed she was pregnant was to schedule her